A millionaire approached a poor girl selling clothes on the street to offer her money, but what the girl said left him speechless, and he couldn't hold back his tears. Gabriella woke up to the cold morning air hitting her face. She slowly opened her eyes, getting used to the dim light that filtered between the buildings. At 10 years old, she was already used to sleeping on the streets. Since her parents passed away when she was only 6, her life had been a constant struggle for survival. She sat up and looked around. Other children like her, homeless and with nowhere to go, were also beginning to wake up. Some cried silently while others remained quiet, huddled in a corner, seeking warmth. Gabriella's heart ached as she saw their tired faces and their eyes filled with sadness. She had been there too, and she knew how it felt. Slowly, Gabriella stood up and began to gather her few belongings: a thin blanket, a bottle of water, and a bag with some clothes she had collected the day before. As she walked through the empty streets, she could feel the cold morning air piercing her bones. Her bare feet burned from the contact with the asphalt, but she kept going, accustomed to this type of hardship. Her first stop was always a small church a few blocks away. There, the volunteers allowed her to shower and have a hot breakfast before starting her day. Gabriella greatly appreciated this small gesture of kindness because she knew that many of her street companions didn't have access to these privileges. Once cleaned up and with a full stomach, Gabriella went to her workplace, a busy corner near the city center. There she sold the clothes she had collected during her rounds through the wealthy neighborhoods. Some clothes were donated by generous families, while others she found in containers or in the trash. But for Gabriella, each garment was a treasure that could mean the difference between going hungry or not. With a smile on her face and unwavering determination, Gabriella unfolded her small makeshift stall and began offering her wares to passers-by. Some looked at her with pity, others simply ignored her, but Gabriella wasn't discouraged. She knew that each sale was a step closer to her goal: raising funds to help other children in her situation. Over the years, Gabriella had learned to be patient and persistent. She knew it wasn't easy to convince people to buy used clothing, but she also knew that each piece sold represented an opportunity to help those most in need. So with a smile on her face and a glimmer of hope in her eyes, Gabriella went about her daily work, trusting that one day she would make a difference. As the morning progressed, she began to notice that sales were increasing. Some people stopped to examine her merchandise, and occasionally someone would buy one or two garments. Every time this happened, Gabriella felt an enormous sense of satisfaction, knowing that this money would be used to help other children. However, not all customers were equally kind. Some looked at her with disdain, as if her mere presence bothered them. Others even hurled insults at her or ignored her completely. But Gabriella had learned not to let these rebuffs affect her. She knew that her mission was more important than any rejection or indifference she might face. Sometimes Gabriella ran into other children like her, also selling various items on the streets to survive. Although they didn't know each other, they would often exchange a few words of encouragement and mutual support. Knowing that she was not alone in this daily struggle gave her the strength to carry on. As she worked, Gabriella remembered the lessons her mother had taught her. She had instilled in her the importance of generosity and compassion towards others. "Remember, my daughter," she would say, "there's always someone who needs it more than you." Those words had been etched in Gabriella's memory, becoming the cornerstone of her way of life. When her mother passed away, Gabriella was left alone in the world with nothing but the memory of her teachings to support her. But far from giving up, the girl clung to those values with more force than ever. She knew that if she wanted to honor her parents' memory, she had to continue fighting and helping those most in need. So day after day, Gabriella sold clothes with the sole purpose of raising funds to donate to organizations that helped other homeless children like her. No matter how difficult her own situation was, her determination to do good always prevailed. As the hours passed, Gabriella slowly accumulated the earnings from her day's work. Each bill and coin was carefully tucked into a small inside pocket of her coat. She knew that every penny counted and that at the end of the day, that money would become a life-changing opportunity for some child in need. At lunchtime, Gabriella usually shared a simple sandwich with other street children. Sometimes the volunteers from the church would bring them a hot portion of soup or stew. These moments of camaraderie and solidarity among the children were what she appreciated most. Gabriella knew that despite the difficulties, she was not alone. As the afternoon wore on, Gabriella continued offering her goods to passers-by. Some stopped to browse, but few were willing to buy. Even so, Gabriella wasn't discouraged. She knew that each sale, however small, represented an opportunity to help someone. From time to time, Gabriella would observe the children who, like her, sold various items on the streets. Some offered sweets, others cleaned car windshields, and a few, like her, sold clothes. They all struggled to survive in a world that seemed to have forgotten them. Gabriella wondered about their lives, whether they had families waiting for them at home, or if, like her, they had been forced to fend for themselves from such a young age. Deep down, she wished she could help them all, but she knew her own resources were limited. As the sun began to set, Gabriella started packing up her belongings. It had been a busy but satisfying day. She had managed to sell several items, and although the amount collected wasn't excessive, it was a great achievement for her. Carefully, Gabriella counted the money she had earned and put it in her pocket. Then she set off for home, a small alcove under a bridge where she shared space with other children in her same situation. Upon arriving, Gabriella greeted her companions with a smile. Some received her enthusiastically, while others remained silent, huddled in their corners. She knew they were each dealing with their own traumas and difficulties, and she respected those moments of introspection. Gabriella sat down in her usual corner and began to organize the clothes she had brought with her. Some were in better condition than others, but they would all have a new home tomorrow. She would separate and classify them and then offer them to people with the same passion and determination she had shown throughout the day. As she worked, Gabriella reflected on the meaning of her work. She knew that to many what she did might seem insignificant or even useless, but for her, each piece sold represented an opportunity to change someone's life, and that's what gave her the strength to keep going. As night fell, Gabriella settled into her thin blanket, seeking warmth and comfort. She closed her eyes, aware that tomorrow would be another day full of challenges and opportunities. But no matter how hard her reality was, she knew her heart was full of hope and determination. Gabriella fell asleep with the satisfaction of knowing that despite the adversities, she had done everything possible to help others, and that for her was the most important thing. The next morning, Gabriella woke up with renewed energy. After washing up and having a light breakfast, she headed back to her spot on the busy corner. Today, more than ever, she was determined to sell as many clothes as possible. As she walked, Gabriella looked around, admiring the city that surrounded her. Despite her poverty and precarious situation, she always found something that amazed her. The imposing architecture of the buildings, the hustle and bustle of people coming and going, the vibrant colors of the shops. All this reminded her that although her life was difficult, the world kept spinning, full of opportunities and possibilities. Upon arriving at her stall, Gabriella displayed her wares with the same enthusiasm as always. Today she had managed to collect some better quality clothes, which gave her hope of selling more and raising more funds for her cause. As the hours passed, Gabriella struck up conversations with some of the passers-by who stopped to look at her merchandise. Many were surprised to hear the girl's story and her determination to help others. Some were even moved and ended up buying several items, aware that their money would go to a good cause. Gabriella was immensely grateful for each of these interactions. She knew that although the money she collected was important, the truly valuable thing was the opportunity to share her story and raise people's awareness about the plight of homeless children. Sometimes Gabriella would meet families who, moved by her story, offered her food, water, or even some clothes. She accepted these gifts with humility and gratitude, knowing that each gesture of kindness gave her the strength to continue her fight. As the day went on, Gabriella noticed her sales increasing. Each piece of clothing sold represented a small victory, and she felt increasingly optimistic about the possibility of raising a significant amount of money. At one point, while Gabriella was helping a customer, she noticed a man watching her from across the street. The man was elegantly dressed with an imposing bearing and a thoughtful expression on his face. Gabriella felt uncomfortable under his gaze, but decided to ignore him and continue with her work. However, the man didn't move from his position. Instead, he slowly approached Gabriella's stall, a look of curiosity on his face. The girl looked at him cautiously, wondering what he wanted. "Hello, little one," the man said softly. "It seems to me you have a rather interesting business here." Gabriella nodded silently, not knowing how to respond. Tell me, what's your story? How is it that a girl like you ends up selling clothes on the street? The man asked, showing genuine interest. Gabriella hesitated for a moment, but finally decided to share her story. She told the man how her parents had died and how she had been forced to live on the streets, struggling to survive. She spoke of her determination to help other children in her situation and how she dedicated every penny she earned to charities. The man listened attentively, his expression growing increasingly moved. When Gabriella finished speaking, he was silent for a moment, as if processing everything he had just heard. Finally, the man took out his wallet and pulled out a wad of bills. Here, he said, extending the money toward Gabriella. This is for you. You can use it for whatever you need. Gabriella looked at him with surprise and confusion. For me? But why? She asked, unable to believe what was happening. Because you've moved me with your story and your determination, the man answered. You are an exceptional girl and deserve a chance in life. Take this money and use it to improve your situation. Gabriella remained silent, speechless. Rarely in her life had she received such a selfless act of generosity. She slowly reached out and took the money, feeling a lump in her throat. Thank you, she whispered, tears in her eyes. But I can't accept it. This money can help many other children who need it more than I do. The man looked at her in astonishment. You're refusing my offer? He asked incredulously. Gabriella nodded firmly. Yes, I prefer that you donate that money to organizations that help other children like me. I can keep working and earning enough to cover my own needs. The man watched her in silence, visibly moved by the girl's response. He slowly put the money back in his wallet, his gaze fixed on Gabriella, full of astonishment and admiration. You are a very special girl, he said finally. Your generosity and determination leave me speechless. If only there were more people like you in this world. Gabriella gave him a shy smile. You are also a good person for wanting to help me, but I prefer that you use that money to support other children who need it more than I do. The man nodded silently, clearly impressed by this little girl's strength of character and values. After a few moments, he cleared his throat and spoke again. Tell me, Gabriella, how has such a young girl managed to stay alive on the streets for so long? Gabriella proceeded to tell the man how she had learned to survive, to get odd jobs, to collect clothes, and to donate what she earned to charities. She told him about the help she received from the church and the volunteers, and how she had managed to forge bonds of friendship and solidarity with other children in her situation. The man listened attentively, nodding from time to time. He seemed genuinely interested in learning more about Gabriella's life and the challenges she faced daily. And tell me, what do you want most in life? The man asked with a warm look. Gabriella thought for a moment. What I want most is to be able to help more children like me. I wish I had the means to give them a home, food, education, and love. I know what it feels like to be alone and homeless, and I don't want anyone else to have to go through that. The man nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. I understand. You are a truly exceptional girl, Gabriella. Your generosity and compassion are truly inspiring. Gabriella blushed slightly, feeling a little uncomfortable with so much praise. I simply do what I think is right, nothing more. The man smiled. Well, let me tell you that you are much more than that. You are a true hero to these children who struggle to survive on the streets. Gabriella fell silent, speechless. She had never thought of herself as a hero. She simply did what she believed was fair and necessary. The man observed her for a few more moments and then said, Gabriella, would you like to talk somewhere quieter? I'd like to get to know you better, and maybe I can help you in some way. Gabriella hesitated for a moment. She would normally be wary of a stranger offering her something like that. But there was something about this man, in his eyes and his tone of voice, that inspired confidence. Okay, she replied finally. I know a place near here where we can talk. She quickly gathered her things and led the man through the streets to a small square away from the bustle of the main avenue. There they sat down on a bench, and Gabriella waited expectantly for the man to speak. Gabriella, you've really impressed me with your story and your outlook on life, the man began. I find it admirable that at such a young age you have developed such a deep social conscience and such a sincere desire to help others. Gabriella listened attentively in silence. I would like to propose something to you, the man continued. What would you say if I offered you the opportunity to study and have a more stable life? I could help you find a home, education, and everything you need to get ahead. Gabriella's eyes widened in surprise at this unexpected offer. But why would you do something like that for me? She asked, clearly confused. The man smiled. Because I think you deserve a chance. You have such a noble heart and such admirable determination that it would be a shame to waste your potential on the streets. I want to help you so that you can achieve everything you set out to do. Gabriella stared at him in disbelief. No one, apart from her parents, had cared so much about her or offered her an opportunity like this. She didn't know what to say. I don't know what to say, she stammered. It's a very generous offer, but why do you want to help me? There are so many other children on the streets who need it more than I do. The man looked at her tenderly. Precisely for that reason, Gabriella, because you have shown that even in the worst circumstances, you are capable of thinking of others before yourself. That's truly exceptional and worthy of being rewarded. Gabriella remained silent, overwhelmed by the proposal. On the one hand, she longed for a more stable and secure life, away from the hardships of the streets. But on the other, she didn't want to leave behind her friends and companions who were still struggling to survive. I understand that it's a difficult decision, the man continued, but I want you to know that if you accept, it won't just be for your benefit. You can use everything you achieve to help more children like you. You will be the instrument of change. Gabriella looked at him with a spark of hope in her eyes. You mean that if I accept, I can continue helping other children? The man nodded. That's right. In fact, I hope that is your main motivation. With the education and resources I provide, you can do so much more for those children who are now struggling to survive. Gabriella reflected deeply on the proposal. On the one hand, she was terrified of the idea of leaving behind everything she knew. But the prospect of being able to help more children, to give them an opportunity like the one this man was offering her, was too tempting to ignore. Finally, after a few minutes of silence, Gabriella looked up and said with determination, I accept. I will do everything in my power to help others, just as you are willing to help me. The man smiled broadly and extended his hand to Gabriella. I am very glad to hear that, little one. Together we will make a great team. Gabriella took his hand, sealing an agreement that would completely change the course of her life. From that moment on, nothing would be the same. As they walked toward a new destination, Gabriella felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. For the first time in a long time, she glimpsed the possibility of a better future, not only for her, but for all those children who, like her, were struggling to survive on the streets. As she walked beside the man, Gabriella couldn't help but wonder what destiny had in store for her. Would she be able to fulfill the promise she had just made? Would she be able to use this opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of others? These questions accompanied her, but Gabriella was determined to do her best. She knew that with effort and determination, she could become the hero those children needed. And with the help of this mysterious man, maybe she could make her dream of giving them the love and happiness they longed for come true. As she walked, Gabriella allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was willing to face any challenge with the same strength and generosity that had always characterized her. Days had passed since Gabriella had accepted the mysterious man's proposal, and she still couldn't believe her life had taken such a drastic turn in a matter of hours. After their meeting in the square, the man had taken her to a luxurious apartment in the city center. There, Gabriella encountered a world completely different from the one she was used to. The walls were covered in artwork, the furniture was elegant and refined, and everything seemed to gleam with an almost supernatural glow. In the first few days, Gabriella felt overwhelmed by so much luxury and comfort. She was used to living with the bare minimum, sleeping outdoors, and finding her own food. Now she had a large, comfortable room at her disposal, a huge kitchen full of food, and all kinds of services and attention. But despite the obvious improvement in her living conditions, Gabriella couldn't feel entirely comfortable. She missed her friends from the street, those children with whom she had shared her struggles and hopes. And above all, she missed the feeling of doing something tangible to help others. That's when the man, who had introduced himself as Alejandro, proposed an idea that lit up Gabriella's eyes. "Gabriella, I know this change has been difficult for you," Alejandro said warmly, "but I want you to know that my intention is not only to improve your personal situation, but also to give you the means to continue helping other children." The girl looked at him intently, listening to his every word. "I've been researching some charities that could use your help," Alejandro continued. "I would like that once you have settled in here, you could start collaborating with them. You could use some of the resources I provide you to support their programs, and thus continue to make the difference you care so much about." Gabriella felt her heart fill with joy. This was precisely the opportunity she had been waiting for, to be able to continue her work, but now with more resources and support. It seemed almost too good to be true. "Can I really do that?" she asked excitedly. "Can I continue to help the street children?" Alejandro nodded with a smile. "Of course, Gabriella. That is my main goal in offering you this opportunity. I want you to use everything we provide to make a difference in the lives of those children who are so important to you." Gabriella couldn't hold back tears of happiness. After so many years of struggle and sacrifice, she would finally have the chance to do something more than survive from day to day. Now she could dedicate herself fully to her true passion, helping others. In the following days, Alejandro introduced Gabriella to several charities that worked with children living on the streets. The girl listened attentively to the various projects and programs they offered, fascinated by the possibilities opening up before her. Little by little, Gabriella began to familiarize herself with this new world. She learned to navigate intricate bureaucratic procedures, plan activities, manage resources, and above all, developed a deep connection with each of the children who were part of these initiatives. Whenever she visited the shelters or community kitchens, Gabriella would encounter faces that seemed so familiar to her. They were children like her, struggling to survive amidst adversity, but with that same spark of hope in their eyes. And in those moments, Gabriella felt her purpose grow even stronger. Thanks to the resources Alejandro provided, Gabriella was able to make significant contributions to several projects, from the purchase of food and clothing to the organization of recreational and educational activities. Her contribution was invaluable. But beyond the practical aspects, Gabriella made sure to give those children something she herself had longed for so long: affection, attention, and a sense of belonging. She perfectly remembered how hard it was to feel alone in the world, and was determined to prevent others from going through the same. Little by little, Gabriella won the affection and trust of the children. They saw her as a leader, a friend, and even a big sister, and Gabriella, in turn, found in them the motivation and strength to keep going. Alejandro watched this whole process with a mixture of pride and satisfaction. He knew he had made the right decision by offering Gabriella this opportunity. Seeing her flourish and become the heroine so many needed was the greatest reward he could imagine. One day, while Gabriella was supervising a day of games and crafts at one of the shelters, Alejandro approached her with a serious expression. "Gabriella, I need to talk to you about something important," he said, a certain urgency in his voice. The girl looked at him with concern, wondering what could be so serious. "A few days ago, I received a proposal from a company interested in collaborating with our foundation," Alejandro explained. "They are willing to make a significant donation, but with one condition." Gabriella listened attentively without interrupting. "The condition is that you become their brand ambassador and promote their products," Alejandro continued. "I know this might sound a little strange, but if we accept, the donation we would receive would allow us to greatly expand our programs to help street children." Gabriella fell silent for a moment, processing the information. Being a brand ambassador wasn't something she had planned on, but if it meant being able to help more children, perhaps it would be worth considering. "What would my responsibilities be as an ambassador?" she asked cautiously. "Basically, you would have to participate in some of the company's events and campaigns, give interviews, and promote their products positively," Alejandro explained. "Nothing too strenuous, but it would involve some public exposure." Gabriella nodded slowly. "I understand. And tell me, how much money could the foundation receive with this donation?" "A considerable amount, Gabriella," Alejandro replied. "Enough to open new shelters, dining rooms, and educational programs. We could help many more children than we can currently reach." The girl thought about it. It was a unique opportunity to expand the reach of her philanthropic work, something she had longed for from the beginning. While the idea of being an ambassador made her feel a little uncomfortable, she couldn't deny that the potential benefit to the other children was enormous. "Okay," she said finally, "I agree to be the ambassador for this brand if it means we can help more children." Alejandro gave her a beaming smile. "I'm so glad to hear that, Gabriella. I know it's not something you're too excited about, but I'm sure you'll do great." The girl nodded, trusting Alejandro was right. After all, her main goal was to help others, no matter the means she had to use. In the days that followed, Gabriella began to prepare for her new role. Alejandro helped her familiarize herself with the company's products and practice her speech for public events. Despite feeling a little uncomfortable with all the attention, Gabriella tried to maintain a positive and enthusiastic attitude. Soon came the time for her first appearance as an ambassador. It was a charity event organized by the company where Gabriella would have the opportunity to present some of the foundation's programs and talk about her own story. When she took the stage, Gabriella's legs trembled slightly, but when she saw the smiling faces of the children waiting in the front row, she knew she had to be strong. She would do anything for them. In a clear and determined voice, Gabriella shared her story, how she had survived on the streets, how she had found the strength to help others, and how this opportunity had allowed her to broaden her scope of action. She spoke passionately about the dreams and hopes of those homeless children and the importance of providing them with support and affection. The audience listened in silence, visibly moved by her words. When Gabriella finished her speech, there was an eruption of applause and cheers. Some even approached her to congratulate her and express their admiration. Alejandro, who was watching from the side, smiled proudly. He knew Gabriella had managed to touch the hearts of everyone present, and that this donation would be the starting point for an incredible transformation in the lives of hundreds of children. From that day on, Gabriella became the visible face of the foundation, participating in events, giving interviews, and spreading the word about the work they were doing. While she initially struggled to adapt to so much exposure, she soon discovered that she had a natural gift for connecting with people and conveying her message of hope and compassion. Every time she saw the children in the program smile and receive the help they so desperately needed, Gabriella felt deeply fulfilled. She knew her personal sacrifice was worth it, as it allowed her to change the lives of so many others who, like her, had suffered the consequences of poverty and lack of opportunities. Little by little, Gabriella became a public figure, recognized for her altruistic work and her unwavering spirit of service. Her story spread further and further, inspiring others to follow her example and get involved in social causes. Alejandro, for his part, made sure that Gabriella had all the support and resources she needed to carry out her work. Together, they designed fundraising strategies, expanded existing programs, and devised new initiatives that could provide a better future for street children. In one of their many planning meetings, Alejandro suggested an idea to Gabriella that left her astonished. "Gabriella, I've been thinking about something that could be truly transformative," he began with an enthusiastic look. "How would you like the possibility of opening our own home, where we could welcome street children and offer them a safe and warm place?" The girl looked at him wide-eyed, barely believing what she was hearing. "A real home? Do you think we could do something like that?" she asked with a mixture of excitement and skepticism. Alejandro nodded with determination. "I am convinced that it is possible, Gabriella. With the funds we have raised and your leadership, I think we could create a space that will change the lives of many children." Gabriella was silent for a moment, pondering the idea. Since she had begun working with the foundation, she had dreamed of being able to provide more than just temporary assistance to homeless children. She longed to offer them a home, a place of refuge and rebuilding. "But how would we manage to maintain such a project?" she asked with concern. "I know we've raised funds, but I don't know if they would be enough to support a home in the long term." Alejandro smiled confidently. "Don't worry about that, Gabriella. We have been working on a sustainable financing plan that includes donations, sponsorships, and fundraising activities. I'm sure we can achieve it." The girl was silent for a few moments, imagining the possibility of having a place she could call home. The idea filled her with an emotion she couldn't express in words. "Do you think we can do it?" she asked finally, a spark of hope in her eyes. Alejandro took her hands affectionately. I'm convinced that we will, Gabriella. You have been the inspiration for all of this, and together we will make this dream come true. Gabriella felt tears welling up in her eyes. For years, she had longed to be able to give other children the opportunity she didn't have, and now that possibility was becoming tangible. So what are we waiting for? She said, quickly wiping away her tears. Let's get to work right away. I want this home to become a place of hope and new opportunities for all those children in need. Alejandro nodded, visibly excited. That's the spirit, Gabriella. Together we will change the world, one child at a time. From that moment on, Gabriella and Alejandro embarked on a project that would be the culmination of all their efforts. They searched for the right location, designed the spaces, hired the necessary staff, and began recruiting the first residents. It was an arduous process full of challenges, but Gabriella remained firm in her resolve. She knew that this home represented much more than four walls and a roof. It was a symbol of hope, love, and a second chance for those children who had been forgotten by society. Finally, the inauguration day arrived. Gabriella felt nervous, but at the same time overflowing with emotion. When she cut the ribbon and saw the first children entering the building with looks of wonder and hope, she knew that all the effort had been worth it. In the following days, Gabriella devoted herself entirely to the management and care of this new home. Together with a team of social workers, psychologists, and teachers, she designed programs focused on the education, health, recreation, and personal development of the residents. Whenever she saw those children laughing, playing, and sharing moments of warmth, Gabriella's heart would swell with indescribable joy. Finally, after so many years of struggle, she was fulfilling her dream of providing them with a refuge and an opportunity to rebuild their lives. Alejandro, for his part, was always present, supporting Gabriella in whatever she needed. Together they formed an unbreakable team, united by a common mission: to transform the lives of those abandoned children. As the months passed, the home they had created became a beacon of hope for the entire community. Children and youth came from all over, attracted by the warmth and security they found there. Gabriella made sure that each of them felt valued and supported. She gave them affection, attention, and, above all, instilled in them the conviction that they too could achieve great things, no matter how difficult their past. Sometimes Gabriella would run into old acquaintances from the streets, children she had seen struggling to survive. To see them arrive at the home with a new light in their eyes was one of the most gratifying rewards she could receive. Little by little, the home became a symbol of transformation and hope, not only for those who lived there, but also for the entire city. Gabriella became a respected and admired figure whose story inspired others to follow her example and get involved in social causes. Alejandro, for his part, continued tirelessly supporting the project, providing the financial and logistical resources necessary for the home to expand and serve a growing number of children. Together, Gabriella and Alejandro formed an unstoppable team, guided by a shared vision of a more just and caring world. As the home grew and consolidated, they both felt deeply satisfied to have accomplished something so significant and lasting. One of the greatest challenges they faced was the growing wave of violence sweeping the city. Some of the young people in the home were tempted to get involved in criminal activities, lured by the promise of easy money and power. Gabriella and her team had to work hard to prevent these kids from falling into the clutches of the gangs. They organized conflict resolution workshops, mentoring programs, and sports and cultural activities to keep the youth busy and away from the temptations of the streets. Alejandro, meanwhile, took it upon himself to establish contacts with the police and local authorities to seek community-level solutions. Little by little, the home became an oasis of peace and security amid the violence that plagued the city. The young residents learned to channel their energy into constructive activities and forge bonds of mutual support among themselves. Gabriella felt proud to see how those boys who had once been victims of abandonment and crime were now transformed into community leaders and agents of change. She knew her work wasn't easy, but seeing the fruits of her labor gave her the strength to keep going. Meanwhile, Alejandro continued to work tirelessly to ensure the sustainability and growth of the home. He managed strategic alliances with companies, philanthropic organizations, and government entities, aiming to expand the resources and services available. Together, Gabriella and Alejandro had become an unstoppable force, capable of facing any challenge that came their way. Their unwavering commitment and shared vision allowed them to constantly innovate and adapt to the changing needs of the young people in their care. One day during a planning meeting, Alejandro proposed an idea that surprised Gabriela. "Gabriela, I've been thinking about expanding our model to other cities," Alejandro said with a determined look. "I think the time has come to replicate this home in other places where there are children and youth living on the streets." Gabriela looked at him with a mixture of excitement and doubt. "Other cities? Do you think we could do it?" she asked, aware of the magnitude of the challenge. Alejandro nodded with conviction. "I'm convinced we can, Gabriela. We have proven that this model works and that it can transform lives. Now we have the opportunity to take it to a much larger scale." The young woman reflected on the proposal, weighing the pros and cons. Expanding to other cities would require an enormous effort, both in terms of resources and organization. But at the same time, she was thrilled by the idea of being able to replicate the success of the home and reach more children and youth living on the streets. "Do you think we can maintain the same quality and the same level of personalized attention in other places?" asked Gabriela, worried about not being able to replicate the close bond they had built in the original home. Alejandro gave her a reassuring smile. "I'm sure we can do it, Gabriela. We have an exceptional team, and we've developed a proven method. Now it's about replicating and adapting it to the needs of each community." The young woman nodded slowly, feeling increasingly excited at the prospect. "So what are we waiting for? Let's give the green light to this project. Together we're going to change the lives of many more children and youth." From that moment on, Gabriela and Alejandro embarked on an ambitious expansion campaign. They toured several cities, identifying the areas with the greatest need and establishing contacts with community leaders and local authorities. The process was not easy. They had to overcome multiple challenges, from seeking funding to building local teams committed to the mission. But with their unwavering determination, Gabriela and Alejandro managed to overcome each of these obstacles. One by one, they opened new homes in different parts of the country, replicating the model they had so carefully developed. Each inauguration was a celebration, an opportunity to inspire others to follow their example and to bring hope to more homeless children and youth. Gabriela closely supervised each of these new centers, ensuring they maintained the same standards of quality and warmth that they had achieved in the original home. She traveled constantly, sharing her experiences, training local teams, and strengthening the bonds between the different locations. Alejandro, for his part, was responsible for securing the resources needed to finance this ambitious expansion. He established strategic alliances, managed donations, and developed fundraising campaigns that allowed the organization to maintain its sustainable growth. Together, Gabriela and Alejandro formed an invincible team, capable of overcoming any challenge that came their way. Their unwavering commitment and shared vision allowed them to move forward without stopping, extending their work of social transformation to every corner of the country. As the years passed, Gabriela became an increasingly recognized public figure. Her achievements and dedication to the cause of vulnerable children and youth had made her an inspiration to thousands of people across the country. Alejandro, meanwhile, remained in the background, letting Gabriela receive the recognition she deserved. He was content to see how this girl who once lived on the streets had transformed into an exceptional leader, capable of impacting the lives of so many others. Despite her growing fame and the considerable weight of her responsibilities, Gabriela never forgot her origins or lost sight of her fundamental mission. Whenever she visited one of the new homes, she made sure to spend time with the children and youth, listening to their stories and offering her personal support. For Gabriela, each of those kids represented a part of herself, an opportunity to provide the help she herself had yearned for in the past. And to see how they gradually regained hope and got their lives back on track was the greatest reward she could ask for. Alejandro watched with pride as Gabriela became. Alejandro knew that in time Gabriela would have to face new challenges and make crucial decisions that would determine the future of the organization. And he would be there to support her, give her advice, and ensure her legacy continued to grow and transform lives. One day, during one of her visits to one of the newly inaugurated homes, Gabriela came across a young man who looked familiar to her. As she got closer, she realized it was one of her old companions from the street, the one she had helped come to this place. Emotion washed over her as she saw how this boy, who had once struggled to survive, was now surrounded by affection and opportunity. Gabriella approached him and hugged him tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I can't believe it's you," the young man exclaimed with a radiant smile. "I will never forget what you did for me during those difficult days." Gabriella smiled back, feeling enormously proud. "I am so happy to see you here, to see that you have managed to get ahead. I knew you could do it." The young man nodded excitedly. "I owe it all to you, Gabriella. Thanks to you in this house, I was able to find my way and rebuild my life. I am now studying and dream of being a lawyer." Can you believe it? Gabriella felt her heart swell with pride. This boy, who had been a victim of the same adverse circumstances as her, was now on a path to success and personal fulfillment, all thanks to the opportunity the home had given him. "I'm so glad to hear that," Gabriella said, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I knew you had that potential within you, and now you're showing it to the world." The young man hugged her tightly, and Gabriella knew at that moment that all the effort, all the struggles, and all the challenges had been worth it. These were the kinds of stories that gave meaning to her work, that reminded her why she had embarked on this mission of social transformation. When they parted, the young man looked at her sincerely. "Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you for believing in me and for giving me this opportunity. I will never be able to repay you for everything you have done for me." Gabriella smiled at him warmly. "You have nothing to thank me for. You are the architect of your own success. I was simply able to open a door so you could reach your dreams. And now it's your turn to do the same for others." The young man nodded resolutely. "I will. I will make sure to help as many children and young people as I can so they can have the same opportunity I had." Gabriella felt her heart fill with hope. This young man was living proof that her work had a real and lasting impact on people's lives, and she knew that as more kids like him managed to get ahead, the cycle of poverty and despair would be broken, paving the way for a more just and equitable future. Alejandro, who had witnessed the scene from a distance, approached Gabriella with a look of pride and satisfaction. "I see you found an old friend," he said with a smile. Gabriella nodded, wiping away her tears. "Yes, and it's one of the best rewards I could receive, seeing how these young people manage to recover their lives. It is what gives meaning to all our work." Alejandro placed a hand on her shoulder, offering his unconditional support. "I'm sure that's just one of many inspiring stories that still await you, Gabriella. You have been the driving force behind all of this and deserve to see the fruits of your labor." Gabriella gave him a determined look. "And I will continue to work tirelessly so that more young people can have the opportunity to transform their lives. This is just the beginning, Alejandro." Together, Gabriella and Alejandro set off for the next home they had to visit, knowing that there was still much work ahead, but also aware that with each child and young person they managed to help, they were building a more just future full of hope. The years passed, and the work of Gabriella and Alejandro in the network of homes they had established became increasingly consolidated. Together, they managed to expand their reach to dozens of cities, providing shelter, education, and opportunities to thousands of vulnerable children and youth. Gabriella, now a young and experienced woman, led the organization's central team with an increasingly clear and ambitious vision. She had learned to delegate responsibilities and develop local leaders who could keep up with the pace of growth and the quality of services offered. Alejandro, for his part, remained the main driver and strategist behind the expansion. His ability to raise funds, establish strategic alliances, and navigate the complex political and bureaucratic networks was essential to the organization's sustainability and growth. Together, Gabriella and Alejandro had transformed the initiative that started as a small project into a nationwide network of homes and programs, recognized for its positive impact in the most disadvantaged communities. But despite their success, Gabriella never forgot her origins or why she was doing this. Whenever she visited one of the homes, she would take the time to interact with the children and young people, listening to their stories and offering her personal support. For her, each of those kids represented a part of herself, an opportunity to provide the help she herself had longed for in the past. And to see how they gradually regained hope and got their lives back on track was the greatest reward she could ask for. Alejandro watched with pride how Gabriela had become an exceptional leader, capable of inspiring thousands of people and making a lasting impact on society. Their determination and shared vision had been fundamental to the success of the organization. My friend, it's been years of hard and passionate work, but the time has come for me to pass the torch to a new generation of leaders, Gabriela announced, a mixture of emotion and determination in her voice. Everyone present looked at her with surprise and confusion, wondering what she meant. After much reflection, I have decided that it is time for me to step aside and dedicate myself to other projects, Gabriela continued. But before I go, I want to make sure I leave this organization in the best possible hands. Alejandro, who was sitting beside her, looked at her with understanding. He knew this moment would come sooner or later, and he was proud that Gabriela had made this decision with such maturity and conviction. I have been working for the last few months to identify and prepare the leaders who will take over, Gabriela explained. They have shown an unwavering commitment to our mission and have developed the skills necessary to take this organization to the next level. One by one, Gabriela introduced the new directors, highlighting their strengths and their vision for the future. They were young men and women with energy and determination that inspired everyone present. When she finished the presentations, Gabriela stood up and looked at the audience with a serene smile. I know this organization is in the best possible hands. These leaders are ready to carry on our legacy and take our work to new and exciting directions, she said confidently. Alejandro also stood up and approached Gabriela, gently taking her arm. Gabriela, you've done an exceptional job at the helm of this organization. Thanks to your vision, your dedication, and your commitment, we have been able to transform the lives of thousands of children and young people across the country, Alejandro said emotionally. Now it is time for you to enjoy a well-deserved rest and to focus on the projects that you are most passionate about. Gabriela nodded with a serene smile. I know this organization will continue to grow and evolve in the hands of this new team, and I will be here to support them and offer my advice when they need it. The room erupted in applause and cheers as Gabriela and Alejandro hugged, sealing a crucial stage in the organization's history. Everyone present understood that this was not an ending, but the beginning of a new chapter full of possibilities. In the days and weeks that followed, Gabriela devoted herself to making an orderly transition and supporting the new leaders in consolidating their roles. Being present in this process gave her great satisfaction, knowing that she was leaving everything in the best possible hands. Finally, the time came for her official farewell. Gabriela delivered a moving speech, full of gratitude and hope. She recalled the organization's humble beginnings, the challenges they faced, and the achievements they had accomplished together. This organization is not just mine or Alejandro's, Gabriela said with conviction. It belongs to all of you, to each of the children and young people we've been able to help over the years. And now it is your turn to take it to new heights, to continue transforming lives, and to build a more just and inclusive world. Gabriela's words moved everyone present, who gave her a tearful standing ovation. They knew that although she was stepping away from the daily leadership, her spirit and her legacy would remain alive in each of the homes and programs they had created. Alejandro approached Gabriela and hugged her warmly. I am so proud of you, Gabriela. You have left an indelible mark on the lives of thousands of people, and I know your work here isn't over. It will transform into something even bigger. Gabriela returned the hug, her heart filled with peace and gratitude. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you for believing in me from the beginning and for being my traveling companion on this incredible adventure. We did it together. Gabriela and Alejandro said goodbye to the organization, knowing that their legacy would continue to grow and transform lives for a long time to come. In the following years, Gabriela embarked on new projects, using her experience and network of contacts to promote social initiatives in other areas. But her heart would always be with that organization that had been born from her dreams and that had now become a symbol of hope for thousands of children and young people.